Hey everyone, this is Ryan Hitchler, CEO and co-founder of Centro, and we have a very exciting talk today. Through the course of building Centro, which is a app that brings together Salesforce, Slack, and emails and text messages, we noticed that there is quite a few sales tools in the landscape. And let me show my screen here. Get started. And what we sort of discovered was something very interesting. So we decided to do a formalized research study around this. And we asked over 200 sales professionals questions around the sales tools landscape that they use, and are they finding it valuable? Are they using it to the hopes that their leadership team and the people who bought these tools had dreamed of? And so we covered the gamut of pre-sales. Those are marketing folks and SDRs. Sales development reps. We have sales people, that includes account executives and sales engineers, post-sales, which includes support and customer success teams and service teams. And then leadership is a broad category, which basically covers anyone who leads people in those three groups. And we asked a lot of these questions around the tech stack and was curious about what do people actually use and what do people actually value. The hunch being that there are far too many tools, and many of them are actually not being used by the people doing the work of selling. And we want to present these findings in this paper, which will be released on our website shortly, and talk to our panel of experts. And so I want to introduce them really quick. So I'll start with Trish Hyde. She has long experience running and buying these tools as leader of various sales teams and head of sales. Anything else you want to add, Trish?
Well, Ryan, thank you for including me in the conversation.
Okay, and then we have Tim Schultz. Tim, do you want to give a quick intro?
Yeah, hey everyone. Thanks, Ryan, for having me. Tim Schultz, I head up our sales practice over at New Age Experts. We are a Salesforce implementation partner. So we implement these types of tools that can oftentimes fall into this category, and we leverage them. So excited to be part of the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. And then next up, we have Steve Woodworth. Steve, you want to give your background?
Sure. Ryan, thanks again for letting me be a part of this. I'm VP of Business Development over at Prompt.io, Seattle-based company, been around for about 6 years, and we're based in the SMS texting solution platform. So thanks for letting me be a part of this.
Of course. And then next up, Kelly McCamley.
Yeah, thanks, Ryan. Hi, everybody. Kelly McCamley, currently the product owner of Composer at Conga. Conga right now, we earlier in 2020 have merged with Aptus. So we're all things digital transformation, revenue ops, heavily integrated on that Salesforce platform. So have some experience with tools leveraged in there, both on the sales realm and sales enablement side too. So thanks.
And last but not least, Gabe Walgram, do you want to give an intro?
Yep, thanks a lot, Ryan. Lowest on the totem pole here. Enterprise sales development for a company called JobBite, specialized in talent acquisition and HR software. So yeah, thanks again, Ryan, and happy to join the group.
Yeah, and this panel is, as you can tell, a group that represents most of what we surveyed in the actual formal survey. So we have people who have helped onboard tools like Kelly here, and people who use the tools, and people who buy the tools. So hopefully this is a good discussion around that. So to start out with, I want to show this sales tools landscape done by Nancy Nardine in 2018. It's a bit of an eye chart, and I won't even try to zoom in on it, but you can see the tools landscape just 2 years ago. You can imagine it's exploded since then. And so this really leads up to the next question. What do sales teams actually use? What are the tools that they do the job of selling with? And the survey results showed something somewhat intuitive, which is email, phones, whether it's soft phones or cell phones, a CRM like Salesforce, chat apps like Slack, and then text messaging were the top 5. There was a lot of other tools that got some recognition from the survey, and such as e-signature, marketing automation, sales intelligence, but the top 5 were those primary tools I showed above. So with this notion of all these sales tools out there, I want to ask Kelly first. How many tools have you actually seen a team be asked to use as part of a rollout of enabling the team to do better?
Yeah. Yeah, pulling from experience at Conga, when I did a quick count, it was over 10. So I counted 12 different tools, and they all have different weights and meanings and purposes, right? There's, I'd say, like your core 4 tools that you use anywhere in the sales process. Think of like your CRM, so Salesforce, and then phone, email, like GoToMeeting or Zoom, of how are you actually communicating, and then internal collaboration tools, like chat, Slack and whatnot. Those are all like your baseline tools, but then you have tools you need in that moment, right? For immediate gratification. So like think pre-sale, it's like for Gabe, who am I going to be speaking to? Who's the best prospect? Like what's the lead information I need there? And then moving on through the cycle, you can get into like e-signature tools, or how are you actually generating the documents to be sent out, that are more secondary. So they really surround those core 4, which honestly correlate to the ones that we see here.
Yeah. And Trish, of all these tools, how much investment did you see being made per rep?
I think over the course of time, you can easily see $2,000 to $3,000 a year per rep being spent on tools. I think as you move through the course of the year and things start to change, you start to see the relevance change in the tools that are being introduced. Starting out with productivity tools, and then going to efficiency tools, and then going to revenue tools, and then going to closing tools. Everything just kind of keeps stacking on top of itself. So easily $2,000 to $3,000 per rep.
Yeah, it can stack up quickly, and you want to make sure that those tools are actually used and adopted to help make them more productive. So the next question, so if those are the tools that teams use, I wanted to ask, well, if there's, like Kelly says, 10 or 12 tools in the stack, how well does information flow between these tools? And again, I've categorized this by the 4 sort of top level categories I discussed previously. And something striking is you can look at that sales number, that blue bar in sales. Not at all. Sales, the data doesn't flow between the sales tools at all. And that's a striking number to me in this day and age in 2020, that people are manually copy and pasting data between these apps. Tim, first, I want to ask you, your company spent some time investing in this process. Can you tell me a little bit about how New Age has solved this problem?
Yeah, I mean, so I look at this from 2 perspectives. One, we work with a lot of customers that come to us to implement Salesforce and other, well, primarily Salesforce, but and they're looking to eliminate duplicate entry and so on. But when I look at our organization and what we've done, I've talked to Ryan quite a bit about this, that we've gotten to a point where our system does have pretty efficient data entry, and that leads us sort of to the phase 2 of this, which is, how do I efficiently use that data? How do I collaborate with the 5 people I need to talk to before I am able to reach out to one of the customers that we've been working with for years that I just inherited? So we talk with Ryan. So we look more towards less on the how do we actually get the data to move smoothly, but how do we have those conversations smoothly around it? So we challenged Ryan with that. They came up with Centro. I will plug it for you, Ryan, a little bit, because it's been amazing. Our team literally cannot stop using it. But as I look at my Slack right now, I can see new channels being created and so on. So anyways, we're focused more on phase 2 of that, which is, now we have the data, it's efficient. How do we make the conversations around that data efficient? And for us, that's Salesforce, that's Quip with Salesforce, and that's Slack collaboration rather than phone calls and emails.
Awesome. Okay, and then Kelly, not only data entry being a problem, that's a lot of wasted time when we should be, focused on the customer. How much have you seen not only data retyping as problems, but also just simply focus problems? If you got 10 apps in your landscape and you're switching between apps all day, how much of a focus problem did that create?
Yeah, you first and foremost need to understand, where is that single source of truth, right? Like, where in your organization is your manager and your boss's boss and their boss's boss looking for this information, right? So it's having that clear understanding of the process. And Tim, lucky you know where it's all supposed to live, the Salesforce, but not everybody knows, right? And it's okay, once you get all the information and know that for example, nothing exists unless it's in Salesforce. It's still hard to get everything flowing directly in that light. And the more tools you often offer, the more muddiness this could create. So I think that's what's maybe correlating here a little bit. Is I'd be curious to know exactly how many tools these sales reps in this graph are using, because yeah, first and foremost, finding that single place is going to help expedite that.
For sure. All right, thank you. Next up, we have, the intent when purchasing these tools often is we want our team to be more productive, right? That's usually the reason you'd want something. There's an ROI on it. And, when we looked at this survey, we asked, does it slow you up or speed, does this tool actually slow you down or does it speed up your work? And you can see again, look at that 21% on the sales side, which is you must check the box. So you've been given this tool and you've got to go in there and check the box that you've used it, but don't actually realize any gains. That's probably the worst case scenario when you as a leader go and buy one of these tools. Steve, I want to ask you first, what's your experience with these types of tools, and if they're done correctly, do they result in a productivity gain?
Yeah, I think the key piece here is that any tool that goes in there, you really need to think about the WIFM, right? What's in it for me? And as you think about it for the sales folks, and that sort of what we used to describe as the carrot and the stick, right? There's stuff that's coming down from leadership that it says, we need you to check these boxes. But if there's not a carrot at the end of that, meaning something like what Conga provides with being able to have that order form be able to be created because I've put all that data in there and now I just have a push button and I can get it done. That's a good carrot and stick. But there are others that are out there that it's just more, gosh, I'm doing this, but I'm not seeing any value from it. And so I think as you focus on sales tools, you really need to look at all stakeholders and make sure that they're all getting value out of it. Otherwise, what's going to happen is that those people that are not getting value out of it, they're just not going to use it, or they're going to work around it. And then your investment basically becomes, you're not getting that ROI.
Yeah. Gabe, what's your experience been like as an SDR using these tools?
Yeah, I mean, I'll jump in saying that I think Steve covered a lot of great points there. So much of it does rely on user adoption and from the different stakeholders, because from a pre-sales standpoint, it's like productivity with a lot of these tools is a no-brainer. But then also there is always the accountability aspect for leadership, that then leadership can, it's up to them to explain to the lower level salespeople and their salespeople in general, like, hey, we want this tool to help you, and this is what it's providing for us in leadership, and this is what we're hoping it's going to provide for you. So just keeping that open communication between the different levels is key.
Yeah, good point. Okay, so this next one is really interesting from a high level perspective. I was struck by this when I found the results after they came in, and I cut out the blue bar because that's saying how many of the sales tools do you actually avoid using. So the blue section there says, I don't avoid any of them, I use them all. That means the other 75, 76% are saying, I avoid at least one tool. And that can't feel good as the people who purchase these tools, or even the vendor of these tools, that your tool has a negative attribution of perception around being avoided. Gabe, can you speak to this a little bit? Have you ever encountered a tool that you just hated and actually avoided using?
Well, yeah, so then kind of jumping back to a couple previous slides, the data flow slide. Say, for instance, a team's using 6 different tools. Three of those tools actually do feed into every tool, and then the other 3 don't feed into all of them, or maybe 1 or 2. If you can hit a couple tools that do feed into everything, you're going to rely on those, and those other 3 might go by the wayside. So that's really the key differentiator between which tools that typically are used more often.
Yeah, Steve, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, only experience can tell you this stuff, but I was thinking about what Kelly had said earlier, which is you got to decide which tool does what, right? And where we're going to get that information. And I think we all have been on this call, and the people that are listening in, when you're trying to communicate with all the different stakeholders and they're all expecting that they have a specific channel in which they want to be communicated with, you then find yourself actually having to say the same thing 3 or 4 or 5 times. And I know we're not plugging Ryan today, but that's one of the things that I love about, you know, what you guys are doing, which is this idea of saying, hey, I can choose the channel in which I want to communicate, and then I can also burst that out into these other channels so that I do it once and I'm able to communicate with many in the channel that they prefer.
Right.
And I think that that's key, because otherwise it becomes a time suck that just, for a rep, you're just sitting there going, how many other people do I need to communicate and what other channels do I have to do? So
totally agree. And for the work of selling, you don't want to be frustrated by something like that ever. You just want to get your job done and make quota. All right, so this next one is sort of around tool value. And we asked, you know, is the perception that the company realizes these value from the sales tools versus do you as an individual realize value from the sales tools? And I thought this was really interesting when I was talking to Tim about this, where the bar is, you know, where should we, what should this graph look like? And Tim, you mentioned something about the high value is the bar. Can you talk a little more about that?
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to tools, and this kind of comes from our implementation, you know, you implement Salesforce, and when you look at organizations that don't adopt it, and you see what happens, and the bar needs to be high. The bar needs to be high. I look at this chart, I guess I saw it one time before this, but when I first saw it, I view everything in the red down as a failure or not sustainable, because I guess I think of our owner, Guy Bickle. He always says you can't fake passion. And I think the same holds true. You can't fake adoption. And if people find some value in a tool, eventually that will dwindle away. It will go away. So we need to have a really, at least at New Age, we have a high bar. And I look at those purple sections there of high value as, is this a tool that if I took it away, my team would fight for it to be back? If the answer is no to that, then we need to go look for a better solution, because we're hurting our teams. So that's what we focus on. We keep a high bar. There is no reason, with the amount of Kelly mentioning 10 systems and things, we need to have a high bar on this, and we need to really take a deep look with all these options available.
Thanks. Trish, you talked about this earlier, where, you know, the leadership team needs to really understand the tools themselves. I'd love for you to fill us in on your thoughts there.
Excuse me. I think the chart itself indicates that leadership thinks the things they're putting in place have great high value. And I think that is pretty indicative of part of the problem, is that it's coming from a top down rather than a bottom up. And the value, I think that when we look at this, it really needs to be the when and the why, right? Sales is always going through change fatigue, and leadership will bring out a tool. And I think that they feel like, okay, we've looked at this tool, we've done all this investigation, it's going to solve these problems. And then they roll it out to the organization, believing that it's just going to be transparent, that it's going to focus on that success. And I think that's why there's little value perceived, because it's just another check the box. So I think leadership has to do a much better job of listening to the front line on what tools are needed before they decide what the value is or where they want to spend the money.
Yeah, well said. Okay, so you know, if we look at all these various categories of questions, the last one we asked was, what do you perceive the purpose of this tool is? Is it to help you be more productive, or is it to track and monitor your work? Again, this kind of speaks to what you're just saying, Trish, where leadership seems to have a perception, at least the highest perception in the green, that they are helping to be more productive. Post-sales, not so much, and same with pre-sales. I'm wondering, Trish, your sort of overall response to something that looks like this.
Well, as far as leadership goes, I think this again is indicative of there's a problem, we throw a tool at it, and we believe that it's going to create an improvement in productivity. And the end result of that is that the people that we're leading feel like it's just another window into the big brother world, right? Where we identified a problem, we throw a tool at it because we want to make sure you're checking that box. And I think, again, the message is missed, right? We have to be much better at why are we embracing these tools? What value do we think they have? And do you agree before we make the investment? I think that's a big part of tool implementation that's missed. So I think that it's, again, leadership's perception that throw a tool at a problem and everybody will adjust, adapt, and it will be fixed until next quarter when we have a new problem.
Yeah. And that the leaders need tools to do their job as well, right? They need to understand how things are flowing, what things are being missed, and they need reports on being able to make projections and forecasts on the business. So we do need some amount of monitor and tracking embedded in the tools that we pick that will also help be productive. You want both, right? You want the people doing the work to feel like it's a productivity gain, and you want the ability to project and make forecasts and make decisions as a leader also in the mix. Tim, do you agree with that sentiment? Should this graph look like all greens, and there's just a different question of whether or not it's what the intent is for that person?
I think that's unrealistic for it to be all green, but I think the art of leadership and rolling out a tool successfully and getting adoption is cloaking your needs. It sounds so negative to say it that way, but like, my team needs to know that we're doing this for them. Yeah, now I can track their activities because I need to, but the art of it is when you get the sense that they're doing it and you're just getting what you need out of it, but it is brought through a means that is valuable to them. And I think that's Trisha's point, which so well said and then reiterated here. But I think this is evident. I don't think anyone's super surprised by this. The leaders probably believe these tools are more valuable, but I think we have to think long and hard about it and put the end users first throughout this and be more creative.
Totally agree. So in summary, I think what I've gathered from this discussion is, asking your teams what they're using and valued, and most importantly, why, is a huge question to make sure that you're purchasing things that will have value and be adopted and actually make productivity gains. And if they're wasting time duplicating data, I think take a lesson from Tim and New Age experts and figure out how they did it, because that is such a waste of time, copy and pasting in triplicate, as Steve would say, between systems. You want to be focused on the customer and selling, and not just transferring data between systems. Focus on what makes the work of selling easier. As a leader, I think trying to understand the tools yourselves and understand the pain points people have with them is critical. And as a seller, being honest and speaking what's not working and not working. If you're using these tools and you're not raising your hand, I think it's a good opportunity to say, hey, this isn't working out for me. I'm re-entering data here in triplicate. And last is a little plug for Centro. So, we've incorporated Salesforce, Slack, email, and SMS into our products. We discovered this problem during our time building apps for Conga the last 4 years, where we were having conversations about customers in Slack and not in Salesforce. And we pulled on that idea and wanted to expand upon it. And as yesterday's big announcement from Salesforce acquiring Slack, I think we're on the right path. So we're trying to keep sales reps' attention focused in the apps that they're using and streamline that data entry and keep leadership up to date. So trying to pull all those things together. Let me pause this screen here. Oh, by the way, we are on the Salesforce App Exchange and the Slack app directory if you want to try us out. Let me see if we have some questions here. 1 second. Okay, so, I think one question might be, and if you have questions out there, feel free to post them in the Q&A. One question I've heard is, if you were to wave a magic wand, Steve, as far as what tool set you were given at any company you've ever joined, what would you wish for?
Well, I'm not a warlock, but if I were and I had a magic wand, there's a couple things. For me, and I love how Kelly talked about it in sort of the phases, right? There's the prospecting side of it. For me, having the ability to have insights not only into and be able to slice and dice my market so that I can get after people that are actually interested in what I've got to talk about. That's huge, right? And then being able to easily transfer that into that system of records so that as I'm moving them through the process, I'm able to actually start figuring out, okay, what does my average sales cycle look like? What does my close percentage look like? Those sorts of things, so I can start helping the business. And then on the sort of the back end of the tool or the back end of the cycle, which is really trying to close the business, how can I help in doing that and make that sales rep's life easier? Because the start and the end, those are more of the science side of it than the art side of it. And tools are really good at resolving those. If I can be encouraged to keep, in this case, Salesforce up to date, then we're in good shape. So that's where my magic wand would go. There you go. I was at Hogwarts, by the way. Just wanted to make everybody.
We do have a question from the chat here. So how often do we see leadership support reps using their own self-selected tools and then rolling these tools out more broadly? This sounds like a bottoms up type of question. Kelly, do you have a comment on that?
What I've noticed is if you have a high performing sales rep and they're doing something maybe a little different, of course, the sales leader is going to want to listen and it's going to benefit them. Again, the whole organization. And I often see sales reps be rewarded when they're also, performing high. So I think it's not only correlated to the tool, but how are they leveraging it? Is it producing results? And
Yeah.
if both are yes, then yeah.
Nice. Trish, have you seen this as head of sales where you see people from the ground up adopting the tool, and how have you handled that?
Yes. I also see it goes back to something that you mentioned earlier too, is the avoidance of tools. But I think that Kelly's absolutely right. If something's working for an individual, it'll be investigated further. There'll be a deep dive into it, and it'll be perceived that everyone can use it the same way. And it becomes, I think, a point of friction because just because it works for one, it doesn't work for all. It's also a very expensive lesson, but it happens more often than I think a lot of people think.
Yeah, I 100% agree. Okay, I want to give us enough time to wrap up here. I want to thank each of you, Trish, Steve, Gabe, Kelly, Tim. Thank you so much for your time and your expertise and weighing in on this subject. And I have this video recorded. I will send it out along with the slides and the report if you so wish. So thank you all for your time. Appreciate your panel of experts, and we'll talk to you next time.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.